Hi, everybody. I'm glad you could come out tonight. My name is Kim Fulmer-Humphrey, and I'm the founder and president of Community Connect Maine. I just want to thank Em Lewis and the Rockland Public Library for hosting us, and thank the City of Rockland and First National Bank and Maine Developmental Disability Council, who has sponsored 3 years in a row the digital story workshops that were compiled into Invisible tonight. And when we became a nonprofit in 2020, we were family members with adults with disabilities, and for myself, I have a son named Daniel who's 35, and when he got what he needed, he could do well, but it was very difficult getting what he needed. And this seemed to be common among us family members, and we felt like that it's much more easy to shape policy and find opportunities if people understand the lived experience. So we really had the idea of focusing on sharing stories and lived experience as a way to help educate people so that people can get what they need. And our vision is that everybody gets what they need when they need it to have a full life in communities of their choice. And so we found this wonderful teacher, Ann Aronson, in St. Paul, Minnesota, at Metropolitan University. She's a professor emeritus. And she did this online workshop that entails 16 hours, which we did over 4 weeks, 5-week period. And we like the way they came out. They're on our website, but we compiled them into Invisible tonight. And so we welcome all your feedback in the discussion, because we like to know, it's an experiment about what's the best way to get this out into the world. And so with that in mind, we want you to do self-care. If the videos are too much and you need a break or you need to leave, that's okay. And also help yourself to cookies and water, and the restrooms are right around the corner. So we do encourage self-care. So tonight, for the first time, we're showing a movie called Little Sister with Anita Woofenden. And so we're really excited to be showing that tonight. So the Invisible is made up of 11 digital stories. And before we get to that feature presentation, we have a public service video. It's a short video that Community Connect produced with collaborators. We had Evan Murray of Democracy Maine, who interviewed 4 voters who have disabilities: Brian Harnish, Carmi Fadden, Dale Hess, and John McGovern. People with disabilities have been underrepresented when it comes to voting, and these 4 are strong self-advocates who speak up for their rights. With the support of Maine's Secretary of State Shannon Bellows and Molly Thompson of Disability Rights Maine, this video illustrates the power of voting to give every voice a choice, and the ways casting a ballot can be made accessible to all. So we're going to start with that short video, and then I'll introduce our moderator for our feature.
I'm Secretary of State Shanna Bellows, and we want you to register to vote and cast your ballot this election season. Have a disability? It's our responsibility at the state of Maine to make voting accessible for everyone. We want to make sure that every Maine citizen has the right to vote, cast that ballot, and make sure that your ballot is counted.
We have a lot of different ways to vote in Maine. You can vote early or by mail or go in person. Why do you vote?
I vote because, well, there's a lot of reasons why I vote. Based on disability history in this country and the fact that we weren't able to for a long period of time, or we physically couldn't get into the polling places. The evolution of society and the way things are changing, I think it's really important.
That's my voice. And saying that I voted for who I chose, not for someone else chose, but what I chose. Because I don't believe in everything that everybody else believes in. You know, I have the right to say my opinion, and some people may not agree with my opinion, but that's their way. That's their opinion.
Well, I don't in person. I think everybody, like I said earlier, neighbors, all that stuff. I mean, just to know that everybody is doing their duty to vote. I just weigh the pros, the cons, and just pay attention to the issues. It'll be like the financial issues of this country, abortion rights, military spending, we got Social Security, stuff like that, but we got all base,
Big, those are big.
I want to see who is running and everything, and I want to make sure that your vote counts, because if you don't go vote, then you're going to let somebody else that's going to walk in and might take more. Once you go through the whole entire process and get that sticker, and you say, look what I've done, and look at, and then when you leave the polling place, you want someone to see that and say, oh, I gotta go vote.
My name is Molly Thompson, and I'm voting access advocate at Disability Rights Maine. My job is to make sure that Mainers with disabilities can exercise their right to vote without barriers. When you go to the polls, remember that you have the right to ask for help. It's very important that you know your voting rights and what you can ask for. You have the right to ask that someone helps read your ballot to you or that they complete your ballot for you. You also have the right to ask to use the accessible voting system. You also have the right before elections to request an accessible electronic absentee ballot. If you're an individual with a physical, vision, or print disability, this ballot is meant for you to accessibly complete your ballot from home. For more information, go to Disability Rights Maine website at drme.org or the Secretary of State's website. Remember that your vote is your voice and you have your constitutional right to use it.
In 2022, we were first in the nation in voter turnout. By registering to vote and making sure that you vote in this election, you can help make sure that we're #1 this year. Now go vote!
So now I'd like to introduce Lisa Wessel, a board member and our moderator for the evening, and our planning committee.
Can you hear? Okay, that's loud. So thank you, welcome, and thank you for coming out tonight. As Kim mentioned, this is an experiment that we're doing here. This is the first time we've done a hybrid event. So we have, just so that people in the room know, there are over 20 people who are signed in by Zoom. And so the people online know there are about a dozen people in the room. What we would like to do is show the film and then have a conversation. We would really like for this to be a discussion. So while you're watching the film, if you could try to make note of things either that surprised you or that you were hearing for the first time. If there's anything that you want to ask about afterwards, we have 8 of the filmmakers here. There might be some joining us by Zoom also. So what I'd like to do is to introduce the ones that are here, and they're representing most of the films we're going to show, so there'll be a chance to ask questions of them. So to introduce them, I'm just going to have them just turn around and wave. Anita Woofenden is here, and Charmaine Daniels, Rebecca Schroeder and her daughter Claire, Alan Kurtz is here, and Kim Humphrey is one of the filmmakers too. And I think a couple of them will be joining us by Zoom. We'll see. We'll find that out afterwards. And we're cognizant of the fact that the presidential debate is tonight. We scheduled this before CNN scheduled theirs, but it sort of makes the point of how important it is for people to vote. So that really, they drove that point home for us. We thank them for that. And we will try to get you home in time to watch the debate if that's what you're planning to do tonight. So enjoy and have questions ready, because that's why the filmmakers are here.
Some people say to be invisible would be their chosen superpower. But to others, being invisible is an everyday condition and not one they chose, and not a pleasant feeling, often a hurtful one. My son Ben is an adult with some differences because of how he developed. Ben experiences invisibility every day. There are many people who simply do not see him, or upon seeing him, look away, making Ben invisible to them. As his dad, I've often wondered about the sort of people who can't seem to see Ben. To really see him up front and personal would mean to engage with him. Some people are clearly uncomfortable, some even afraid, others simply dismissive. By intentionally not seeing Ben, one can pretend that people like him don't exist. There are even entire groups of people that comprise governmental institutions, schools, medical practices, places of worship, and other organizations that can't or won't see the Bens in the world. Some of these organizations are charged with the duty and responsibility to provide help and support to people like Ben. It's astonishing that they often can't or won't see him. Taking the time and expending the energy and resources to sincerely see and engage with individuals who have challenging profiles is to many unproductive or even futile. The interesting thing, though, is that some people have a natural ability to see Ben. What is it about people who can see him? Do they have superpowers? Some may think so, but they do not. People from all walks of life, local business people, employers, medical professionals, clergy, friends, and extended family fully see, engage, respect, and enjoy a relationship with Ben. Those who see Ben see him not from a place of sympathy, but rather from an openness, understanding, and affection for him, because they have taken the time to get to know him. For us, when we're with Ben, we have a sort of litmus test, an instant way to tell whether someone new we meet is a person we'd like to have in our life. Can she see Ben? So when you meet Ben, or someone like him, say hi. It may surprise you in a wonderful way.
I met my son when he was 2 years old. I was appointed to be his one-on-one aide at the preschool where I worked. I instantly fell in love with this fierce, determined little boy and vowed I would focus all my energy into making his life a little bit easier. Little did I know then that 13 years later, he would move into my home and become part of my family. When Dave was born, they said he would most likely never learn to walk or talk. He would forever be dependent on others for his basic needs. We proved all the naysayers wrong, and David grew into a personable young man who could talk your ear off and was known for his speed in his Special Olympics track races. He became the light of my life and the example of hard work and determination. In the summer of 2021, David started to change. He became aggressive and distant, and he engaged in strange behaviors, like eating markers and tissues and reaching for dust. He had pain in his hands as well as his face and eyes. He developed on and off fevers. He was hospitalized for psychiatric care and brought to the emergency room on multiple occasions. Doctors gave him hypothetical diagnoses like schizophrenia and bipolar, but they always just sent him home without any real answers. I always thought that if he had been a typical young man of 25, he would have been treated very differently. I was on a fast track to losing it myself because of the stress. Receiving no help from anyone else, I decided to dive in and find the cause of his deterioration on my own. Why such an abrupt change? One day, during a hospital lab visit, I overheard another patient talk about how his platelets had dropped to nearly nothing since his COVID vaccinations. This really struck me. I realized that all the changes started after David's first 2 vaccinations. In fact, he ended up in the hospital within a month of his booster. Everything that I read and came up with after that pointed to an autoimmune encephalitis response to the vaccinations. I begged his PCP and the emergency room doctors to perform the tests needed to confirm that his condition was linked to an inflammatory response, which was being caused by autoimmune encephalitis. Each and every time, the medical professionals claimed the tests were unnecessary and would deny my requests. It continued to tell me that sometimes these mental changes happen, especially with special needs individuals. Even when he was brought in by ambulance because he suddenly couldn't walk, they would not perform any testing. 2 hours after sitting around, he was able to walk down the corridor for a juice, so they released him. No explanation given. We were both at the bottom and lost. David was repeatedly hospitalized and highly medicated, unable to come home because of his behaviors. His aggression was increasing, but the medical community didn't want him either. They kept trying to release him. He had to be replaced in an apartment with 24/7 staff support. It seemed no one was willing to help or listen. In a desperate attempt to find someone, I decided to reach out to a naturopath. After our first physical visit with him, he was able to witness how severe of a situation we were in. David had refused to leave his office after his appointment and pulled the couch away from the wall, looking for dust to eat. It took me 40 minutes to remove him while he screamed, "I am not leaving. I am staying here. I am sick." After seeing the severity of our situation, the naturopath referred us to the PIN clinic at the Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center. After getting connected with Dartmouth, we met with a wonderful psychiatrist there who was also a pediatrician. She listened to our story and immediately contacted David's PCP. She requested further blood tests and pushed for a referral to a specialized neurologist. Unfortunately, it took a few months before we were actually able to see that neurologist. But after one meeting with David, he was diagnosed with autoimmune encephalitis post-vaccination. We had found someone, finally, to listen to us. We continue on our journey, and things are getting better, but my boy is still not quite the same. The neurologist said that because of the delayed treatment, that things may never be back to the way they were. I don't want to take that as an acceptance. We will keep fighting like we always have. My boy was born with the cards stacked against him, but through the years we have learned to take those cards, match them up, and raise them even higher. This story won't be any different.
I'm Dakota. I love cats. Cats can cheer you up when you are sad. They can calm you down when you are upset. Cats can make you smile and laugh. My mom says cats are better than a weighted blanket. Cats cuddle, purr, and need. I love to pet my cats. Oreo has long hair and is fluffy. Hamilton feels like a velvet blanket. Spud is soft like feathers. They give me kisses and mark me by rubbing against me. My cats love to play with toys. Their favorite toys are teeny mice. Spud plays fetch with them. They all like cat teasers and lasers. I laugh the most when we give them catnip. They go crazy. Oreo is small, but mighty. She is the alpha and keeps her brothers in line. Oreo sometimes gets her hair cut. She loves to feel you pet her skin. Hamilton is a bit of a troublemaker. He likes to ride on my mom's shoulders. Hamilton also likes to be up high, even places he shouldn't go. He also likes to throw his food and chase it. Spud is the youngest, but the biggest. He will run in front of you to lay down and block the door, so you won't leave. Spud loves to chase and play with Oreo and Hamilton. He also likes to be groomed by Hamilton. I am lucky to have cats. Oreo, Hamilton, and Spud make my life better. My mom adopted me. We adopted our cats. Now we are all a family and we take care of each other.
Despite being 2.5 years younger than my sister, I have always felt like the older sibling. When I was a little kid, I didn't have the vocabulary for it. I didn't know what an intellectual disability was, but I put myself into a caretaker role and grew up looking after her. When I was younger, it was a lot harder for me to have my own life separate from my sister's because I got schlepped to all of her appointments. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and doctors. But I do know which waiting rooms have the best toys. It's the Boston Children's Hospital. There was definitely a lot of resentment. My sister is not always the nicest person, and the things that she said would be genuinely hurtful. And that caused a lot of self-hatred because I knew that the way that she acted wasn't her fault, but it's hard to reconcile that. One of the more difficult things for me was being dragged to her therapeutic riding lessons. For as long as I can remember, I've loved horses. I've always wanted to ride, but for years it was my sister who got to do the one thing that I've always wanted to do and couldn't. Eventually, my sister's therapeutic riding ended, and we found a program with a trainer who let me work in exchange for riding lessons. She changed my life. I've been riding and competing and teaching riding lessons for over 10 years. And then when my sister joined a Special Olympics equestrian team, all she could talk about was how she wanted me to see her ride. I ended up surprising both her and my mother by driving 12 hours home from college to watch her compete. And when she won her first blue ribbon, I was the first person she wanted to show it to. I recently became a high school teacher in an inner city public school where I teach inclusion classes with students in the special education department. Because of my experience with my sister, I am much more mindful of my students' needs. I've learned from my sister to meet people where they are. For better or worse, my sister has taught me to put other people before myself. I am a better teacher and a better person because of her. I would gauge who my friends should be based on their reaction to my sister. If they treated her nicely, if they're kind, then that's someone who I keep in my life. She's kind of my litmus test for humanity. I ended up telling my boyfriend early on in our relationship that my sister and I are a package deal. She's my sister and I love her and I want her to have the best possible care. and there isn't anyone I trust more than myself to advocate for her. She's not his responsibility, but he had a right to know from the beginning that if this was a problem, it was never going to work out. It's important for parents to make separate time for all of their children. My dad used to take me and my sister on separate little weekend vacations, and it was invaluable to be able to have him to myself for a while. And I spent a lot of time with my mom going on road trips at like 10:30 at night or spending hours in her office just talking through everything. I also think it's really important for parents to give space for their children to be honest. I would have these moments where I felt like I hated my sister and I would go crying to my mother, and she has never been judgmental about it. Siblings also need to give themselves some grace. The difficulties and the problems that come with having a disability are real and genuine, but so are our emotions. You can't expect all sunshine and rainbows. It's just not realistic, and you have to allow yourself to be okay with that. To be honest, I live in fear of my parents dying. I have no idea what my future with my sister looks like, and that absolutely terrifies me. But I'm learning that I have to just live with the fear and see where life takes us.
When Jake was born 3 months premature, we were told preemies often catch up with full-term babies. But later, when I put him on the carpet with toys, he never moved toward them. At age 2, he was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. After that, life was tied up in a jumble of therapies to address weakness on his right side that threw his gait off balance and even affected his speech and ability to print his name. I remember feeling lonely, scared, and exhausted. It all felt unfixable. Despite his issues, Jake did well in school and developed a love of reading and stories. But in his teen years, a new diagnosis of nonverbal learning disorder revealed vastly different wiring in his visual spatial perception. No wonder he couldn't easily zip up his coat, ride a bike, or decipher columns in math problems. However, I didn't realize there was something beyond worry on the horizon. With a strong affinity for studying history, Jake went on to college, hoping to become a teacher. When his name was called to receive his diploma, I held my breath, afraid he would fall on the stairs leading to the stage. But he made it. Later, in his 20s, when he still couldn't get a teaching job and was too anxious to substitute teach, he abruptly quit his longtime cashier job at Walgreens. What might come next troubled me, but he soon decided to enroll in an online graduate program in history. With support services and subsidized housing, he also began to live on his own. At age 30, even as he sought counseling to manage anxiety, he has a master's degree and a part-time job he likes. Along the way, I've discovered someone who's sweet, likes puns, understands the origins of the Cold War, and shares his French fries. Someone who doesn't need to be fixed. And you had a lot of therapies growing up. Did you feel like you needed to be fixed?
No, I did not. Because I didn't feel like I was broken per se. I think there was definitely things I realized like, okay, I can't necessarily do as well as other folks. Doesn't mean that I can't improve on those things, and even if I can, it doesn't mean that I'm broken.
Dear Claire, you have officially launched. The last few years have flown by, and now you're a Striveview graduate. You can be certain that the world is your oyster now. This means you can do anything you put your mind to. You've been through so many changes these past few years, and now you're living in your own apartment. Can you believe it? As I think back to the day you were born, I had no idea what was in store for you, but I hoped your future was bright and full of possibility. Claire, you were such a little thing growing up. Do you remember how we used to call you Peanut? You may have been small, but boy, you were mighty. You never sat still and were always on the go. And with only one eye that could really see well, you seemed to take it all in stride. Your energy was limitless, and you always kept us laughing. But as you grew older, things changed. School wasn't as much fun anymore, and learning became a lot harder. You were told that you had a disability because you had some challenges that other kids didn't have. You were shuffled between schools and special programs that sometimes helped, but more often didn't understand what you needed. But here's what I want you to know. If people have labeled you as disabled, it's because they don't really know you. I rarely think of you that way. In fact, you are more able-bodied than lots of people I know. The truth of the matter is, you'll have to work a little harder to get what you need. It may take a little longer, and you'll have to have patience with people who simply don't understand you. But you can do it. You are like most daughters. Sometimes you frustrate me. Sometimes you tune me out. And there are times when we get irritated with each other. But more often than not, you're the one with a smile on your face, humming a tune, eager to share what's going on in your life, and always ready to give an opinion. Life wouldn't be the same without you, Claire. You make me smile and add so much color to my day. The world is a better place because you are in it. You're finding your path and growing into a self-assured young woman. And you're taking the steps to lead an independent and fulfilling life. We are so proud of you and so blessed to have you in our family. Congratulations, Claire. Love, Mom.
I don't think there were many places that could deal with Kathy, except the one, I think one or two, like the one she's in now. And the state for years said she didn't need that kind of care. And that was unfair to the agencies as well as to Kathy. Nothing works as you expect it to work. And none of the doctors or PTs either had the patience or the wherewithal or the knowledge to know what to do about it. We finally got her up to 100 pounds by realizing that she got too exhausted feeding herself. And now she has to have all her food ground because of her problems with choking. She does need help with her balance, stability. She can't do any of her ADLs alone. She is supposed to have 2 people with her when she's out. We began running into problems with staffing. And then it became a little bit dangerous. There was a lot of harm done simply because they got overworked and then they lost staff, and then she wasn't allowed to know when they'd come back or if they were coming back. And she just cannot live with that, not knowing. People would tell her something very firmly and turn their back on her, which is like shutting a door on us because she couldn't communicate if she couldn't see their eyes. One thing she could do, she realized, was reach up and grab that hair, which was power to her. It was a very stable place when we came there. And again, she had 2 roommates she'd known before. Staff seems to come in. One thing they seem to learn is the attitude that goes with that house. She was losing it, that she could go to her room alone or with her aide or go outside, but she couldn't stay with people because she was going to hurt them. And that made her pause a little bit. First, it was very hard to do. Now, she will flounce down the hall and slam her door. And if she thinks she hasn't slammed it hard enough so people heard it, she'll slam it again. And that's informed them that she's had it for a little bit. And then when she comes back in, everybody's smiling. She smiles, she settles down, and she's fine. I can see the edges of the worst times still in her brain, and when things begin to go wrong. And I am scared to death, quite frankly, that if Kathy's care is lessened, I can see her being able to fall right back into that other world and just give up. And I can't believe that people are so blind that they keep doing the things that are wrong. It seems to work so much better with these some wonderful things when things are going right.
It was my first day of student teaching in a special education program at a high school. I never saw Jay that day. I could hear him, though, tearing apart a storage closet as he was observed through a peephole. Jay came back to school 2 days later, but again, I never saw him. The end of the school day, I did see the big, strong aide, now bloodied and bruised, who had been hired to work with him. And I remember thinking very explicitly, when I get my degree, I hope I have enough flexibility in where I work that I will never have to work with someone like him. Jay returned to the state institution where he had spent a number of years early in his life and was confined there for 9 months. Fortunately, For both Jay and for me, things did not work out as I had hoped. My first job, in fact, after graduating, was reintegrating Jay back into his school and into his community. The focus of the program was on controlling his behavior, and our strategies included the use of physical restraint. Our approach eventually backfired, however, and did so in a really big way. Several months after I left to teach, things fell apart. Cycles of aggression, restraint, and abuse had slowly escalated, leading both Jay and one staff person into a terribly negative dynamic from which neither could escape, and ultimately led to Jay experiencing significant physical abuse. 9 months later, Jay moved into my home and stayed there for 11 years. One event from that time really stands out. That's when he deliberately spilled a drink on the kitchen floor. And he looked at me, and as he did so, he had this expression on his face of utter fear or horror. This was his first attempt to communicate with us an important lesson, and that was, in everything you say to me and everything you do with me, you need to be communicating that I am safe with you. We also learned that we had to help him build trusting relationships, first with a few people, and then by gradually expanding his community. One thing we also learned very early on was that we had to get Jay a hot tub. We slowly built on a few close relationships and gradually expanded his ability to connect with others and to participate in his community. One of the early highlights for me was taking Jay to the grocery store for the first time. We got whatever he wanted, and we put it in the cart. We've gone a lot of places since then, including on vacations. We've actually flown several times, once to Florida, once to New Orleans. We've done a lot of fun things with Jay. There have been ups and downs over the years. He is now supported by an agency in a home that he is renting with the option to buy. We have dinner with him once a week, and he often comes to our house to visit. Continues to be hard helping the staff who work with him understand the fundamentals of supporting Jay, the most important of which is to convey to him through everything that they do that he is safe. People who do the best with him are those who understand it's not about winning, but it's about supporting Jay in a way that works for everyone.
Have you ever wondered why people need shoes that fit?
Dan can't speak because he has severe autism.
You want a drink?
Sometimes he will answer your
Daniel,
questions by shaking his
drink?
head
You want a
yes
drink? Yes or no?
or no. He knows how to use picture icons and an iPad to make some simple choices with prompting. Communication is his greatest challenge. He likes to be out in his community and has a sense of purpose delivering Meals on Wheels to 15 clients every week. He takes care of his house. We discovered when he was young that he required well-trained, coordinated staffing and appropriate programs in order to learn. There is a fine line between who he is when his basic daily needs are met and who he is when essential support is inadequate. With wrongly fitting support, he becomes frustrated. Over his lifespan, these were the times when he learned a new behavior like kicking, biting, pinching, and pulling hair. He would lose the skills he learned. Aggression would reemerge during these times as a form of communication. Because of inconsistent staffing, and he could not make progress. Our family lived in sustained duress while we were waiting for the right fitting resources. At age 11, he left our family home to attend an out-of-state specialized school that provided the right support. He came home at age 20 when he graduated to where he lives now. It is a home that has 24/7 support. It's a group home. It's his home, and it works.
Are you having a good day? Yes.
But his life is always hanging by a thread. I believe he has had the best that our current society offers, but we can do better. The state tells families like mine we can't provide the amount of support needed. It costs too much for our current budget, but we can give you some people something. Giving my son less than he needs is like asking to live those days in shoes that don't fit. What if families heard instead, everyone gets what they need when they need it? We know this improves quality of life and saves money in the long run. Daniel would be further along with communication and skill development and may never have developed aggression in the first place. Instead, he would have consistent opportunities that were right for him to meet his basic needs, just like wearing shoes that fit. He and others like him would come to know their value. We would see it in their faces. And just like Daniel, we would see it in all of their faces. Daniel, do you approve of this message? Yes or no?
Our vision: all people have the support they need when they need it to live a full life within communities of their choice.
What draws me to performing is I like people around. I like people watching me. It makes me feel good. I have dreams, but I feel like I've been labeled for having a disability. And sometimes it hurts when I actually want to be like everybody else. I want to be a normal person and be able to achieve things that any other person couldn't achieve out there. I started singing at 13 years old. Some of the fears I had was going on the stage and forgetting something. JFM actually watched me sing and watched videos for quite a while. And then they offered me to sing at memorials for anybody that passes in JFM. I got a chance to do the Star Spangled Banner at the Special Olympics. I sent in a video of me singing the Star Spangled Banner and they picked me out of the people. I got a chance to do that and in front of hundreds of people. So that was a really big accomplishment.
O'er the ramparts we once were so gallantly streaming.
I didn't think that I was going to be able to play guitar because you have to have a lot of concentration. Also, you with my learning disability, I didn't think I was able to because it's a lot of details, I thought that I had to have someone teach me face to face and like hand on hand kind of thing. I started playing guitar during COVID around 2020. I found an app on my phone. I learned where you would play a note. It would, if you got the note right, it would do a green check mark. So I was able to like play different songs. I wasn't able to do cheering in high school due to me being in special ed, so I wasn't given that. I looked on social media and found a special needs cheer team, and I got to cheer with them for 4 years, and I got to compete around New England. I also did cheering, but that was not a special needs team. That was a level 4, which was a lot harder. And I was offered to be on that team, which I never thought I would be able to. The dancers are quick, the stunts are a lot harder. So I was able to do things like learn all these skills. I was able to coach 3 to 6 year olds and bring them to Myrtle Beach. I got to help them get to Myrtle Beach, and then they got first place, and I got to be there for that. I feel like I've grown more through the years. I feel like I'm stronger from accomplishing like my coping skills and like singing, cheering, being independent, and I feel compassionate about a lot of my things I've been through. I feel self-worth. I'm most proud of earning my cheer medals. I've earned all of these. It's not me, it's not my family. In your head, they are fighting with their tanks and their bombs and their bombs and their drums. In your head, they are crying. In your head, in your head, zombie, 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 and what's in your head?
My name is Anna McDougall. I grew up with Down syndrome, which I call Up syndrome. I am an artist, an athlete, an author, and a self-advocate for people with disabilities. I lived in New Hampshire before I moved to Maine. I was still in school, and I didn't have many services. It felt like I wasn't included in things. There wasn't a social scene. A person with a disability usually graduates with an IEP diploma. I didn't want that. My teachers wanted me to stay in high school until I was 21, but I didn't want to. I wanted to graduate with a regular diploma with my friends. Don't say no to me. I did it. I graduated with a real diploma, and I had a graduation party like everyone else. I like to be treated like a normal person without a disability. I love my mother, but I want to leave home and be independent and take care of myself. Not many people with disabilities can go to college, but I did. I got accepted to go to Leicester University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in a program called Threshold. I was there for 3 years. My sister went to college here in Maine, and she said to everybody, I'll have my sister living with me so she can have everything that she needs. In Maine, I have more friends, I have a social life, I have a day program, I have transportation, services, everything I never had growing up, I have now. But then the state of Maine wanted to cut so we wouldn't have a day program to go to, and there would be less services for all people with disabilities. Hearing that really hurt my feelings as a person with a disability. In January 2016, I went to the State House in Augusta to testify about cutting services for people with disabilities. I told them people with disabilities are not a number. We are people. We have a voice. We have feelings. I did that out of love for everyone with a disability. I made a difference. That bill passed thanks to me. I advocate for what I want. The day program I was fighting for is called Spindleworks, in Australia for adults in Brunswick. I am an artist and I work there. We do pottery, painting, weaving, woodworking, mixed media, performing arts, fashion design. I do chenille weaving. I'm also a multimedia artist. Spindleworks puts on art shows where I love to talk about my art. Like weaving, I say it looks like Skittles. This is the Fall Night scarf, and this looks like Skittles. So it's appreciation of love, art, passion, connections, and with connections in the Brunswick area, we have so many connections in the community. The community comes to us. It's a really, really great thing. But some of us like doing shows by ourselves. Some people need help to get their own art show, but I did it myself. I talked to the manager of Little Dog Shop and I got my own show. I had a good show and sold 2 paintings. I also published a book called A Look Back. I was inspired to write my favorite band, the Indigo Girls. It is about overcoming obstacles with Down syndrome /up. The Indigo Girls is a band I grew up with, and the music got me through everything. When my sister got tickets and backstage passes, it changed my life because being a teenager with a disability, we overcome things differently. It takes us long to overcome them. I really did struggle a lot in school. Being in special ed and the music got me through it all. They told me everything would be okay. And I knew everything would be okay. When I met them, I said, I'm gonna write a book about this. Now I'm working on my second book called Ski Dreams. I am involved in Special Olympics. It's so much fun to compete downhill skiing. It's my favorite sport. In 2017, I competed in Special Olympics, World Winter Sports in Austria. I stayed there for 2 weeks. It was an amazing experience, and I was on ESPN. I came in second and third place, and I had overcome a serious knee injury to do it. I had physical therapy. I had so many x-rays. I had a brace, but I did the exercises. I never skipped one physical therapy appointment. I didn't want to give up. When I got my second place medal, I cried because I did it. I always will be an advocate for myself and a good role model for people with disabilities and abilities. I love to do what I do.
Okay, so now we're going to open it up for questions. What I'd like to ask of the filmmakers, if they could come up and sit in the front, if they could sit at the table, because then people can see them, and then I think people on Zoom will be able to see them also. Hi, Daniel. Okay, so now we're going to open it up for questions. If anyone in the audience, I'm going to try to go back and forth and pay attention to people in the chat as well. We have somebody monitoring the chat, and she's going to let me know when there's a question. So are there any questions for anybody in the audience? Or any impressions, anything that somebody would like to share? Okay, Charmaine, did you want to say something? There's a microphone there. It's the plus minus thing at the bottom. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted, can you hear me now? Yeah. I wanted to say that, I wanted to say to Anita that I was so glad for her honesty in portraying how it felt to be a sibling of somebody with a disability. And I know that's often overlooked, so.
Well, I have a question for Anita, since we should, just to keep it going. That was a really personal story that you told. And so I'm wondering, just sort of in response to Charmaine, if you could explain why it was that you wanted to tell that story.
Part of why I wanted to tell that story was because as a child, mostly, I was very bad at talking about this. I didn't want to ask for help. I didn't want to do anything. I wanted to just kind of deal with it and be left alone. And that led to a lot of really toxic internal thoughts, because as I mentioned in the video, you know, I knew that this behavior that was difficult for me was not her fault. So it was sort of a lot of rebounding those feelings back inward, which is not very healthy, and it was harder than it needed to be. So I wanted to make the video just to show that, you know, it's a very complicated situation, and I don't think there's necessarily a right way to go about it. But for other siblings of people with disabilities, you know, you're not alone if you're feeling things that are not all positive and happy and smiley. That's okay. Like, your feelings are also valid, even if it's not, you know, this beautiful media portrayal that I think we tend to see. So that was why.
Thank you. Hillary, I'm going to bring a mic over because I think the people on Zoom will not hear otherwise.
Hi, Anita. I just want to say thanks for sharing that, because I have two boys. My older young man is 25 and he lives in a group home in Orono. His name is Alex, and his brother Will is going to be turning 21 in August. And I wanted Will to be here, but he's washing dishes at a restaurant, so he couldn't be here. But I think it was really great what you shared, and I think it's so wonderful to have that kind of communication and just to hear your story. So yeah, just the real truth, you know? So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions on Zoom yet? Yes.
I want to start off with a couple comments from the Zoom. Elena says, wow, what an incredible set of films, truly inspiring and very moving. Nancy Hall says, so powerful. I think there was one more. Oh, Tom said, an amazing set of stories to share and to learn from. Thanks so much. And Todd had a question for parents whose adult child has found an apartment. If you weren't there, would there have been enough support?
I'm going to put that back on Rebecca and Claire, because Claire, you're living in an apartment. And if you could both talk about your moving out of home and moving into your own apartment.
Well, I am actually not living in an apartment anymore. I have moved to a condo in a little bit of a safer area because living downtown was a little more not so safe because there was a lot of violence going on. There was protesting, and there was a lot of anger. And so I didn't feel very safe. And I was worried about getting hurt by those kind of people. So I talked to my parents and let them know that because I was crying a lot, I said, I don't feel safe down there, and my parents weren't really understanding what I was feeling, and after a couple times, I told them that I just don't feel safe in that area because I was seeing violence, I was seeing protesting, I was seeing a lot of anger, and so I said, I want to move to a safer area where I can feel more comfortable and protected, but yeah.
Can you talk about when you first moved, though? Yeah, I understand why you would want to move. That makes perfect sense to me. I'm wondering about when you first moved from an apartment, from your home to an apartment, like how much support did you feel like you needed from your parents at the time?
When I first moved out of Skyview, it was hard. It was kind of, I felt like I wasn't really ready to live on my own, but I would say, I think it took quite a while for me to get used to living on my own and moving to an apartment, and I found it a little scary. It was a lot of anxiety, but as soon as I started, and then I knew that my ADHD was getting worse, so I went on anxiety medication to help lower the anxiety during moving. And since I've been on those meds, I've been doing better, and and now I'm happy where I am in a safe area and loving living on Forest Avenue.
Great. Well, congratulations. I'm curious from your mom's point of view then, what that was like as a parent, like to have your daughter move from your home into her own apartment for the first time.
It's definitely anxiety provoking, but you want that for your kid. But it was hard for Claire at the beginning. But we also realized over that first year that it just wasn't a good environment for her. So we were able to find someplace else, and she's been there a year, and she's been really successful, and she's busy during the week, and it's been really good. So it's an adjustment period, absolutely, but you can make it work.
Great, thank you.
And I don't have their name, but C. Gerwin asks, what has making these films meant to each person who has made them, including people with disabilities, parents, siblings, etc.?
We could just go down the line. Do you want to start, Alan?
Sure. Is this on? This microphone?
I don't
know.
know.
Okay. I thought it was great making the film. I really enjoyed it. It was a chance to think about what's happened over the years, what's been good, what's not been so good, and what works for. It was a chance to think about what works for people, especially my friend Jay.
Great. Charmaine?
Yeah, I think it's not on. I think I can just talk loud enough.
But the people on Zoom won't hear you.
I think for me it was what Ellen was saying too, is the chance to reflect on the experience, and that's not easily done because you're so consumed with trying to find services and what will help to make your child successful, and you're having a lot of emotional turmoil and dealing with a lot of therapists and systems and agencies, and so it's just a time to perhaps, you know, some people might write or express it through art, but you know, this was a way to tell a story that I felt needed to be told for myself and for other people as well. So it was satisfying and gratifying, I guess is the best way to say it, and helped me make sense too.
I think for me, the decision to make and then show this video was maybe a little bit more controversial, a little bit more difficult to decide to do that, because, you know, the last thing that we wanted to do was to make people with disabilities feel guilty or feel like a burden, because that's simply untrue. However, on the other hand, kind of like what Charmaine said, it felt like an important story to tell, because I do think it's a side of the reality that's not talked about quite as much. And I think it, you know, it affects everybody in the family, all loved ones. So it did feel a little bit cathartic to tell that. And the hope is that maybe there will be someone at some point who will feel a little bit less bad about themselves as a result.
Okay, don't you? Claire, what did it feel like when you saw the video that I made for you?
I would say that, you know, it really, like, you know, it would make me cry, but not like sad, but happy, you know, that, you know, there are people out there, you know, with disabilities, that people that might not understand who people are, you know, a lot of, you know, people, you know, for me, like, you know, I see a lot of people with disabilities get bullied or picked on and, you know, might not understand people. So I would say that it made me feel good inside, but otherwise, you know, the video that my mom made, you know, she put a lot of effort into it, you know, a lot of hard work, and it just made me feel appreciated.
Thank you.
So for me, I think storytelling is a really good way of sharing some emotional content or part of, as you say, your lived experience. And I was really excited to do this. It was really hard. The actual process of doing the video was really hard. It was painstaking, and I wanted to do it well. But I really did enjoy the process. And I think for me, it was a way to give Claire a gift, because she had worked very hard over the last 3 years at Strive, especially during the COVID lockdown. She was there, and she worked really hard to get through that 3 years, and she graduated, so it was my present to her.
Well, for me, over the decades, I thought of just like how much time is wasted on wait lists, or the gaps in staffing, or people that don't have the training, and how much joy is missed out and progress is slowed, and how I feel that that's common in the population, that what I was seeing in his life. And I just felt like I had that metaphor, like if only people could really see that, like, you have to have your basic needs. It's not something you can get along without it. And I just thought, you know, I think you can understand if your shoes don't fit, you know, you're not really getting it. It's not okay to wait like 2 years for something. You're really hurting people by doing that. And so that's what motivated me. And Daniel, do you have anything to express? Dan? Did you like being in the movie? There's so much that the more he learns, the more we know him. And there's so many things to try to observe in what he likes. And it's just, it's such a wonderful thing to get to know him. And I think people need that opportunity for this population, and they're missing by not getting it.
I have a follow-up question for you, Kim. It seems so simple, the idea of getting people what they need when they need it. And you've been fighting for this for a very long time. I've been at it for 25 years. You've been at it longer than that. Why do you think it's so hard? I mean, do you have an idea of why it's such a simple thing is so hard to accomplish?
Well, I think it's, I think by human nature, we like take the easiest path. And so to do something different, like accommodate someone, you have to think differently and you have to put energy into it. And I think that when you do it, you see it's worth it, and you need a collective doing it so that the policies become there, and then it becomes less effort because you're not fighting for the whole thing, because everyone is doing it. So it just seems like for doing these digital stories, you're seeing a lot of individual lived experiences, and so it's really motivating for me to be able to be a part of learning about other people's lives. And I've just learned, even just knowing, I've been in each of the 3 workshops and seeing just how much you learn, even when you know someone before. When you start hearing about experiences, you just see things so differently, and it's just, it's enriching.
Thank you.
Let's see. I have a couple questions on here. Let's see if I can find them again. Let's see. There we go. Aaron Dalton asks, what does Maine do right in terms of providing support and services for people with disabilities and autism? And what do you feel that Maine could do better?
Who wants to start with that one? I promised I would get people home in time for the debate. Do you want to take that?
I'll take that question. We actually lived in Massachusetts for most of Claire's life. We moved to Maine for her to be able to go to Strive U. But in Massachusetts, it's very much the same, I presume, in that you have to fight tooth and nail. And nobody gives you a guidebook. You don't know any of this as a parent. You don't have any clue. And there are no mentors. There's nobody telling you what to do. You have to search, hunt, and peck for everything. It really is seems to feel like a very adversarial relationship when you're constantly trying to get what your child needs in an educational system. But when we came to Maine, part of the problem was that we were put on the doomed waiting list for services, and it was very, very difficult. She was waiting for over a year before she could even get anything, a case manager, anything. It was a very difficult year. So,
but now I got an awesome case manager.
right. So now things are good, but it took forever. And I don't know what it's like having a young child. I mean, she came to Maine as an adult, but as a young child getting services in Maine, I don't know what that's like, but I presume is as lousy in Maine as it was in Massachusetts.
Absolutely.
So we moved to Maine from Germany when Alex was 5, and we came to Maine because my mother was living here, and I'm obviously American. And we found it very welcoming. Alex was in an excellent educational setting. We moved to Camden Rockport, where they had wonderful special ed. I felt like my experience now that Alex is 25 is that it's really great when the kids are in school. because you have really good special ed, you have lots of services, and there's no problem. They're at school, the school needs to provide, they're engaged. And then the problem was when they start to get older, we were really worried when Alex was about to graduate, what was happening, and it felt like you were falling off a cliff. So my personal experience is that seems harder, when the individual grows up, what's going to happen, how are they going to live? And I think there's a lot of pressure for everybody in terms of, what happens when the parents are getting older, who's gonna take care of your kid? So that's my experience.
Alan, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I would say one of the nice things about Maine is that if you really advocate for someone, you can really get customized services and supports. But it really takes a lot of advocacy, and it takes a lot of, and that just continues forever. It never stops. What I would say is not being done well is I don't think direct support professionals are being paid adequately. And I think that as a result, I mean, with Jay, I've seen a couple people leave in the last 2 months who were really great, but just couldn't afford to continue working at that job. And it's really unfortunate.
Anyone else want to add anything? Claire?
I think, Maine is, a great place to, live and, and when I first moved here, I didn't know when I was actually going to get services or get the help I need, and finding a case manager, somebody that would, work, and right now I just found out recently, I'm looking to the Goodwill company, a job specialist or job employment specialist, and I got an email one day saying that unfortunately that person I was hoping to work with just quit on me, and now, so that was kind of a bummer, but now, I just got another email saying they found me another one, so I'm hoping that this one will stick, and hopefully I'll be able to get the job services I need, and, and since I've been here in Maine, I think it's been a, hard move from one place to another, but I think, there's always opportunities here in Maine that people, can try.
It's a hard question to answer because it's kind of a moving target. When the year that my daughter was born, which was 1996, was the year that Pineland closed, which was the big institution. And it closed under a consent decree, which means it was a court-ordered closure, and the structure that they put in place, the support system, was all under this consent decree, so that they had very little choice but to do it, and to do it well, because the court ordered them to do it, and the court was watching as they did it. Then the consent decree was lifted when that was satisfied that the state had done its job and created a system of care. And at that time, under the consent decree, Maine was a state leader in services for adults with disabilities. It doesn't mean that it was perfect. It means that among the 50 states, they were one of the best for providing services. Since the consent decree, as soon as the consent decree was lifted, the state started to cut funding for it, and it was sort of a death by 1,000 cuts. And now the Health and Human Services Department is completely restructuring the way that they provide services, and it's unclear now how that will look. One of the things that I found is that, I agree with what Hillary said. The special ed laws are fairly good, and so in public school, I think my daughter got terrific services. You do have to advocate for them, though, and a system that you have to fight hard to access is not necessarily a great system, because there are people who don't have the capacity to do that. And so if you can't fight for your child, you're not going to get as good services. That's just kind of a fact. It's unfortunate, and it's true in adult services too. And I completely lost where my thought was going, but I did want to point out that Anna mentioned in her video that she did move here as an adult, and she felt that she was getting much better services in Maine than she got in New Hampshire, which is interesting. I think one of the things that helps in Maine is that we have a citizen legislature, and I think they're really accessible. And if you can, so it's your advocacy, and I don't know if this is what Alan was alluding to, but when he said that your advocacy, can make an impact, I think that's one of the things that's helpful, is that it's easier to make an impact here than it might be in a state where the people who provide the services are so distant from you, that your legislators are not, you don't run into them in the supermarket like I run into mine all the time. And I think that makes it easier. Having a small rural state makes it harder in some ways because I don't know that we have the tax base to provide the services that we have. That's what we keep hearing, is that we can't afford it. We can't afford it. If you don't, like Kim had mentioned, if you don't provide the services, you create crises, and it's worse. It ends up costing more in the end. This is a message that we've been pushing just for years and years. If you don't give people what they need, you are creating a worse situation that costs more, and it's less humane. I don't think it should always come down to dollars, but that's what resonates with people. It's also just less humane. Boy, that was a really tough question, Erin. Thank you.
And Maine just added more Maine just recently added more DS crisis lines for people that might need help.
Yes, I don't know if people on Zoom could hear that. Claire mentioned that the state just added more crisis lines. There are things that the state is trying to do. It's unnerving. And like Hillary mentioned, to not know necessarily what will happen to your child when you die. This is something that, Anita is my daughter, just for full disclosure, if you recognize me in the picture. And that is one of the things that we always ask the legislature or the Health and Human Services Committee when they're talking about the way they're structuring this new program. One of the things they're doing is they're relying very heavily on unpaid natural supports, which means me. I am an unpaid natural support. And this is what you do for your daughter. It's fine. I'm not going to live forever. I turn 60 tomorrow. What happens when I die? I want to have some assurance and comfort knowing that there will be a support system in place when I'm not here anymore. And I would like it to be in place before then so that I can help my daughter with the transition, like what Claire and Rebecca were talking about, having us there to help her into another situation in a more independent life or wherever she's going to move to. So that's what we are just always fighting for. That is what we do. Are there any other questions?
I want to actually cut it off for tonight because we have about 20 minutes before closing, so I'm afraid that has to be it for questions tonight. But thank you so much to Community Connect Maine, and especially Lisa and Kim for organizing this event. And thank you to all the filmmakers for joining us tonight. And thank you to everyone for coming as well. This was really, really fantastic. Thank you.